All right, you might think the title of this YouTube video is corny, but it's true. This guy right here that can't even grow a full beard went from a broke college athlete to selling multiple 8 figures of physical products online and being a part of over 9 figures worth of e-commerce revenue over the last 7 years. And I've never actually shared my full story, just raw and unfiltered. So that's the objective of this video for anyone who cares. And to get it out of the way, no, I haven't cleared 8 figures in profit, that's revenue, but my best month in e-commerce has been over $200,000 in profit take home for myself. And I've been doing this for 7 years, so you can put 2 and 2 together as far as how lucrative this business model has been for me. Now, if you see me flipping back and forth between looking at you and looking at this doc that I have, because I had to refresh my memory as far as all of the bullshit that I actually went through in business and in my personal life to get to where I'm at now. I went through my camera roll and I looked at photos and Shopify screenshots and all of these different milestones that just reminded me of how far I've come. And so for those of you that really don't know who I am or how the hell I got here, and maybe you want to get a little bit of motivation from my story, then that's what this video is going to be all about. All right, so let me take you back before college. So I grew up in an amazing home with loving parents that had maxed out 401ks and that had virtually achieved the American dream. And then long story short, after a couple years of that, shit hit the fan. And I'm not gonna get too much into the details because it's a bit personal, but they basically lost it all. So for the majority of my childhood that I can remember, my parents were either arguing and fighting about money or they were doing a damn good job at hiding it. I remember when I was just about to get into college and I was still a senior in high school, and my family had lost our childhood home that I had been in for 17 years up until that point. And that's a really weird feeling when you're used to being under one roof your entire life and it kind of gets taken away from you. So that's what kind of sparked the drive in me to, at the time, think of it as like pitching in and helping pitch in on family bills or whatever it might have been, but it actually unfolded into something much bigger than that. And so when it came to making money, like literally you name it, I did it. Whether it was shoveling lawns, tutoring, selling candy in class, babysitting, lifeguarding, refereeing, door dashing, Uber Eats, like literally everything that I could have possibly done, I did. And I valued that little green piece of paper more than most people did because it wasn't abundant under the roof that I lived in. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I didn't have a fucking amazing childhood and that my parents weren't the best parents I could have ever asked for. And that still are to this day. And I made it through high school as a 3-sport varsity athlete with way less entrepreneurial drive than I had kind of in like middle school and maybe the earlier part of high school. But I was optimistic and I was actually really excited to go to college and to compete in Division I athletics and to, you know, continue to advance academically, to meet new people, to go to parties, all that fun stuff. Now, fast forward to college, I go to a school that's close by, that's cheap. You know, I had a girlfriend at the time of like 2 years that I was head over heels in love with and that I'm still with to this day. And it also had a really good engineering program, which was kind of like the career path that my family and that friends and other people had kind of pushed me into because they noticed that I was like really interested in breaking things apart and kind of putting them back together. And they were like, you're pretty good at math. You didn't get bad grades in science. So why don't you go and be an engineer? So I was like, all right, whatever. And for my entire first year, I was brutally unhappy. And I definitely was not sure that I can handle that for another 3 years, let alone handle that for the rest of my life as a career path. So for reference, here's what a typical day would look like. I'd wake up at 5. I'd squeeze in some schoolwork before a morning track lift. I'd get back exhausted to cram in a little bit of extra schoolwork before I go to class. I'd head to classes, scarf down a terrible unhealthy lunch in the dining hall, squeeze in mandatory study hours, which are a pain in the ass, go to afternoon running workouts, rain or shine, might I add, get back to do more studying. And for that 1 hour I managed to squeeze into myself, I'd be watching videos on YouTube about this thing called Shopify dropshipping. Now, in a single semester, I remember taking Calc 2, Physics 2, Chem 2, Chem 2 Lab, Physics 2 Lab, and a yoga class. And boy, did I need that yoga.
Did someone say yoga?
No, I think she said whore monitoring ass.
Now, before college, I was super pumped, excited to go. Was thinking about maybe like rushing a fraternity or whatever, going to all these parties. And, you know, when I actually got to college and I realized how much work it was and had that first taste and experience of like adulting, right? Then I was like, if this is what adulting is, then I am not prepared to do this for the rest of my life. Now, I'm not one to quit things that I start, but I was fed up. And so rather than like just dropping out of school with like nothing to do without having any proof of concept in any type of business, I transferred to a school that would be more effective when it came to spending more time on business and less time on an insane school curriculum and daily schedule. And so I did. I transferred and I stepped away from track and field, which was one of the toughest decisions that I had made, so I could free up some time to like give this ecom thing a full go. So my first bit of e-commerce success, if you will, was I had made a bikini store because that's what a buddy of mine had did, and he was DMing them using something called an ambassador method, where you would DM someone and you would give them a discount code and then give them an affiliate link to basically sell to other friends of theirs or family members or social media followers or whoever it might have been. But the catch is, for them to be an ambassador and potentially earn money with your brand, they had to buy the product, and you would give an insane discount code of like 30 or 40% so that they could actually receive the product in order to advertise it, to have their affiliate link that they would drive traffic to make money. Now, with that, I was just DMing a bunch of sorority chicks from different schools, and that was literally my strategy. I would go to like sorority pages, see who was following them, who they were following, and I would just DM every single girl, and I'd say, hey, do you want to be an ambassador? You want to be sponsored by our company, blah, blah, blah. And, I made a couple $100s a month in profit for like 2 or 3 months, but, that wasn't even enough to like cover lunch, but it wasn't really much at the time. It was just enough to kind of give me some proof of concept that this business thing worked, but it wasn't a scalable form of marketing by any means. And then I came across Facebook ads, and I had a few successful stores at low scale, like a few $1,000s a month in profit. And I started posting about it on Instagram, like all, newbie ecom dudes, and people wanted to learn from me. So I decided to make this like super basic starter course. And yes, at that time, I literally only had like a couple of brands under my belt that had made a few $1,000s in profit each. But it was more than people who were wanting to learn from me. And I was naive. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll make a course. There wasn't as negative of a stigma around courses and paid trainings and things like that at that time. And funny enough, I think I might have had like a couple of actual sales on that. And the other like 20 something people that I had inside of that over the course of like a 90-day period that I was marketing it, I'm pretty sure I just let in for free. And also, funny enough, the case study store that I made in that training, I scaled up to $250,000 a month. So it was my first like big taste of success in e-commerce. And I'll never forget, I built that from my college dorm room. I had a whiteboard, and I would like time when my roommate was in classes. So I was able to film this thing. And it did around $35,000 in profit in that one single month. And then I went ahead and sold it for like 30 or 35K the next month. So I made like 70 grand in 2 months as a broke college kid who maybe had like 5 to 10K to his name that he had saved up over a year or two of like slaving away at trying to make this thing work, including that entire summer that I had spent learning it, and that I really didn't do a lot of the things that I'd wanted to do with friends and with family and all that fun stuff. But that's when I knew I had something good on my hands. Now, I was never a rebellious kid, but I was always the hardest worker in the room. I was honest, I was confident, and I decided to drop everything that I was doing and visit a buddy of mine who was studying business at the time in Tampa. And it was kind of just an excuse to like meet a few entrepreneurs that I knew in the area and like expand my horizon, because I didn't really have that many friends in college, and I just kind of would lock myself in my dorm room, and I was building this business and I was networking with all these people online, but I never really had that taste of kind of networking and that experience of working with other people doing the same thing as me in person. And I met this one kid who had recently dropped out, and it kind of like gave me the courage to, have the balls to go to the school that I was at and say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm making good money. And I'll never forget a conversation I had with a professor of mine. I took an entrepreneurship minor, and I sat down with my professor, and he had made so much money, and he was just like, listen, I'm bored, and I'm just trying to help you guys have the best kind of career paths possible, make the most money, see the value in it, and also the lack of value in it, and to really understand your time is the most important thing and all that stuff. But he was like, you'll never have the opportunity to capitalize on what you currently have in front of you if you don't go all in on it. And he's like, this whole college thing, it's not going to change in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. If you want to come back, you can come back. If you want to capitalize on what you're currently doing, you'll never get an opportunity like the one that you have right now, with the time that you have, with the lack of things that you have to lose. And so he was like, go all in. And that's the last thing that most professors would recommend that you do, is like, hey, leave school. It's a very big risk. But I had some proof of concept, and he was like, yeah, dude, ride this wave, because you never know when it's gonna, when the train is gonna stop moving. So anyways, I flew out to Tampa. I met this kid, and I wanted to be around more guys like that. And so I convinced him to fly out to Jersey, and against my parents' wishes, I dropped out of school. That's a whole story in and of itself. And long story short, we move into an apartment together. This is a complete stranger that I had just met, had maybe been talking to online for a little bit, flew out to Jersey. We signed a lease on an apartment for $3,600 a month, plus whatever other fees there were, for a 2-bedroom apartment. Now, at the time, I also financed a new car, one that I still have to this day. And I don't regret it because I learned a ton with it, but I financed it at 18% interest. And for any of you that have half a brain when it comes to financing, purchasing cars, interest rates and things of that nature, 18% is enough to make Dave Ramsey's head explode. Wow! Like $1,000 a month for a car that when I refinanced, I was only paying like $350 a month. So I literally could have owned 3 of the cars that I had, or financed them, if you will, for the 2 years that I was enduring that interest rate. Okay. Now fast forward 2 months of me living with this guy, and he essentially stole $30K from a business partner and I, pretending to help us fulfill orders through an agent and a contact that he had in China. And he was really smart about it, right? Like we sent him like $5,000 to do like a test batch of orders. He actually worked with an agent, shipped them out. They got him quick. We got him cheaper. And then we sent him like $30,000 for a much larger batch of orders when we were scaling up. And he was like, you know what? I'm just going to pocket this and I'm not going to send it to the supplier. And then for a couple of weeks, I'm just going to dick around and send them messages back and forth of, fake tracking numbers that I can stall. So here I am, 19 years old. He moved out after about 2.5 months, didn't pay the 1.5 months rent for month 2 and part of month 3, and just dipped like a coward. I had $1,000 a month in car payments, a $4,000 apartment, and I was sending a few $1,000 to my family here and there to try to chip in on bills where they were falling short. And that's like a big reason why I got into the game in the first place. I was spending carelessly personally and on business, probably north of like $15,000 a month looking back, and didn't have a clue as to what I was doing, financial tracking or budgeting or any of that stuff. I was young, naive, making more money than most people my age, than most people most ages in the United States. And, but I was spending a ton of it. But I did know that I was damn good at selling physical products online. So fast forward a year, and I moved into a new apartment, and I started coaching other people, because I realized that I was spending a lot of money on operations and e-commerce. And so I did use it as a vehicle to make some money at the time. And also because a lot of people were asking me, like I'd built this personal brand on Instagram and I wasn't selling anything. Like I shut down that course because I didn't really love how it came out, even though I got tons of people, some amazing results with that. I had a big Telegram group that still exists to this day, where people were posting results all the time. $100 a day here, first sales there, $1,000 a day, $100,000 a month. Like there were so many results that were coming in, because at that time it was actually a lot easier to drop ship. And I'll never forget the first 3 students that I worked with, I took to 6 figures a month in less than 90 days, which I had done myself a handful of times before I even considered starting to coach. But when I helped other people do it, it became very real for me, because I knew that I had a duplicatable system. And then one of them kind of really changed the game for me, because I scaled his store with him to over $1 million in a month. So I met a young hustler who had a product doing about $100 a day in profit, and he came to me for help. He really had no idea what he was doing at the time. And we literally ended up scaling that thing to over $100K a day and over $1 million a month, netting multiple 6 figures each between me, him, and a third business partner that we had. That taught me high-level Facebook ads, the power of Google ads, the basics of email marketing, offer positioning, ad creatives, etc. And it also made me realize how small I was thinking up until that point. Like when I was doing 100K days for the first time, it was unreal. I was like, I can't believe I thought $10,000 in a day was a lot of money. I think our biggest day was like $125,000. I'll throw it up on the screen if I have a screenshot of it. Now, we also had overcome some insane adversity with a 6-figure processor hold, and we were maxing out credit cards. I was knocking on my neighbors' doors asking for like $5,000 loans to put into the business, saying that I would give them back like interest on it. Like that's how tight on cash flow we were, because the first month we had done around $250,000 in revenue. And if you're in the e-commerce game, you kind of know how that goes, right? $250,000 in revenue. We were scaling up, and we probably did about 200,000 of that in like a 1.5 week period. And so here's kind of what that looked like, right? On a Wednesday, we processed probably 10K in a day. And usually we get the payout for that on like a Friday. Didn't come around, so we waited until Monday. Didn't hit on Monday, so we were a little bit suspicious. So on Tuesday, we went ahead and called the bank. They said, hey, we're just doing a normal review, no biggie, should be good in a couple of days. Long story short, that lasted for like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And they were like, hey, by the way, we're gonna have to hold these funds for 6 months for security reasons. And so, sorry. And by the way, we can't process any more revenue, which we were spending like 5K a day on ads at the time. And we were supposed to be doing 10K. And then we woke up one morning and we literally had $0 in revenue or we might have had a little bit because of PayPal. No, we actually removed PayPal from the store at this time. We weren't using PayPal at all because we got a PayPal hold. To be fair, we didn't really know what we were doing on the supply chain end. We were still learning a ton at that time. But we had a PayPal hold, so we removed that. So we just had this credit card processor. They kicked us off. And so we woke up one morning where we'd normally have like $2,000 in sales, $3,000 in sales. We had literally zero because we couldn't physically process payments and they had held all our funds. So we were scrambling to like try to figure things out, re-optimize the Facebook account, do all this stuff. And, I ended up partnering with a buddy of mine who was fantastic at credit at the time. So he was processing the payments. He was running it all through his like Amex card, and we racked up millions of points with this store. But like it was a process, but at the end of the day, overcame that hold, right? We were just like, we were not going to let that stop us. And the following month is when we did that $1.6 million month, netted a little over $550,000 in profit. And we split that pretty evenly between the three of us. Now it was around this time that I had made my first like real money, right? I'd say, netting like 175K in 1 month is pretty damn good for a 20-year-old at the time who had really only been in the business for like 2 years. And so I was like, how do I multiply this money quick in something that I saw a bunch of other people doing, which was day trading? And I literally lost tens of thousands of dollars that I had saved from e-commerce in this business model. I thought I could easily multiply it and just like be at my laptop a couple hours in the morning and make a ton of money with. I also bought something called an Amazon automation store for some of you like OGs that have been around in the space for like 6-7 years and know that those were very popular, and a Walmart store, only to have like basically gotten scammed out of that. All the while I had pretty high lifestyle expenses. And as you can imagine, I was taking a lot of L's, but I was due for a W soon. Now it was around this time that I really liked the idea of like not having to assume risk on the payment processing side and dealing with the complexities of cash flow. And I actually partnered with a few individuals for a profit split where I did most of the work because I had the expertise, and they just basically processed the funds and paid for the ad spend. Like they funded everything and I did all the work. And then the agreement was that we were supposed to split profit. Now, during this time, I'd been involved in millions of dollars in process revenue and hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit. And I had nothing to show for it after the 3 to 6 month time period in which we generated this profit. And that's because I'd been stiffed, AKA not paid, out of multiple 6 figures in profit that I had earned from having equity in those stores during that time. Lesson learned. So needless to say, that like put me in a tough spot for a year or two. When you think you're making like $2-3 a day in profit, but then a processor hold comes up and then, excuses come in. And then eventually it gets to the point where, the person that you said was your business partner and that you had done all the work to build up the success of the store was like, hey man, really sorry. I just wanted to keep this all for myself and I'm not going to give you a penny of it. Right. And I didn't really have any fancy contracts at the time, or I hadn't really worked with any attorneys on that side of things. I had on like cease and desist and all of that fun stuff, which I can get into in another video. But between two individuals, multiple 6 figures in profit, I might have seen a couple grand of it, but I didn't care about the couple grand. I cared about the couple $100,000. Now, after that, I even moved back in with my parents. Yes. That was about a year and a half, 2 years after having made $1 million in a month with the business model. And about 3 years after having dropped out of college and, despite my parents really wanting me to stay just to have that kind of backup safety plan. So it was a very humbling experience. Now, again, between like holds and greed from the owners, I put my trust in strangers and I had nothing to show for it monetarily, but I still had the skills that I had acquired during that time, which I will carry for me for the rest of my life. And that I was incredibly grateful for the opportunity to do so, because that opened up so many more doors than if I were to have just been written a check for for a couple $100,000. And at the time I did have a profitable brand while I was doing all this stuff, but it wasn't making as much as I would have wanted to. And so after having been stiffed out of a ton of money, but having evidence that I really knew what I was doing in the e-commerce space, I'd probably built over 10 brands to 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, or even 7 figures per month at that time. Only really having been deep in the game for like 2.5, 3 years now. I had another little shiny object syndrome moment, but at least this one made a little bit more logical sense. And it was to create a marketing agency. I was like, you know what? I want a little bit better cash flow. I want some predictability in e-commerce. And I want to take that profitability to be able to reinvest more freely into my e-commerce brands so that I don't have to depend on other people to process revenue, pay me my profit share, and all that fun stuff, because people are greedy. So anyways, I realized I was really good at this coaching thing because I was still doing that at the time. And now I had even more evidence that I knew what I was doing on the brand building side of things. So, I rode that wave for another year before bumping into a now business partner of mine who convinced me to start a marketing agency with him since he had lots of experience with paid ads and managing clients. And I had a lot of the brand building experience side of things and just like overall growth strategy from having done it for myself and for many other students, kind of at the drop shipping level for the ground up. Whereas he worked with a lot of like inventory based D2C brands that had raised money and had taken, the whole fancy route. Now, that went on to generate, multiple tens of millions of dollars in revenue for clients. And it made a lot of people a lot of money over the course of the last few years. And I learned more than I could have ever imagined having just ran my own smaller scale companies and not having exposed myself to this whole D2C world where there are companies making more money than any company ever needs to make. And I was lucky enough to be a part of some of those. But anyways, I threw myself into the day-to-day operations of these brands. And I was like single-handedly the backbone of a lot of these businesses, right? We would mostly do paid ads, email and SMS marketing, and we would assist and consult on the creative side. And we eventually ended up offering the creatives as a direct service. But having worked with like a dozen plus brands at a time, being the backbone of the business and not really having that much experience in the service space, having to put a team together, being the lead point of contact for each of these brands and clients, it was a lot of stress, and it was really ass backwards from what my goals were out of building an e-commerce brand, which is to have like a lifestyle business. Because up until this point, I had done a lot of traveling. I remember waking up and I don't even know what day it was I'd wake up to 10 or 15 grand a day in sales some days and like thousands of dollars in profit. Didn't know what day of the week it was. I was just traveling a ton. I'd bring my girlfriend on. I'd travel with friends and do all this fun stuff. So like e-commerce had always built that like dream lifestyle for me. And yet I was trying to like take these shortcuts, right? Like the agency, I've learned so much from it and I'm very, very appreciative of it. But if I didn't do the agency and I didn't do the day trading in the Walmart store or like depend on other people to like finance a store and process payments, I'd be light years ahead of where I'm at now and I would make much more money. I'd have much more freedom. I wouldn't have to serve any specific clients from an agency perspective, where I was really just like a glorified, customer support representative that happened to be really good at running ads and managing teams and e-commerce operations. So anyways, I took a pause from coaching and building brands for a while because I realized how much more I still had to learn from having worked with these massive companies before, considering myself an authority in the space by any means. After about a year or two, I really had that itch to get back into e-commerce because I was like, man, this kind of sucks. Like the cash flow is okay, but I was making more money when I had my e-commerce brands. It was taking me less time. I was having more fun. I had more time freedom, location freedom, etc. It was less like 9 to 5 structure and calls and this and that. I'd literally jump on a call with like my customer service VAs like once a week, which looking back, I didn't even have to do at the time because they were great at what they did. I helped work on like scripts and stuff like that, but it was just fun and it was pure and it was raw and it was scrappy. And it was everything that working with the agency clients, these bigger venture-backed companies, collared shirts, it's everything that wasn't. And I hated that scene. So again, I realized how difficult building a service-based business was, how annoying managing clients became, how difficult client acquisition and service delivery was when it's your time, right? Not scalable relative to selling physical products online with paid advertising. Like I literally can't think of a more scalable business model because there's really no cap on products that you can sell when you have kind of a free-flowing supply chain like you do with drop shipping, right? And so I actually decided to like shut down the agency for the most part, like not like officially and fully, but like I was checked out. but we still had a few clients and that we were obligated to serve, and a thing called taxes that we had to get squared up on with the IRS. But I really wanted to place my focus 100% back into e-commerce. And to be clear, while I was building out the agency, I wasn't doing coaching because, again, I'd recognized that I had these deficiencies, but I was kind of looking in the wrong places and I was comparing myself to the wrong things. I was saying, oh, if I'm not doing $10 million a month like some of our clients are, then I'm a failure. I don't know what I'm doing, etc. When in reality, I'd done $1 million months. I'd done multiple six-figure months, and I'd done it at higher net profit margins than a lot of the multi seven-figure per month clients that we were working with. But again, at the time, I was like, I swallowed my pride and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I don't know if I'm in the best position to be coaching other people if I'm not actively building these brands from the ground up, drop shipping at this time. And I'm just managing big budgets for these big agencies. And it was kind of like a shortcut for me to learn all this stuff because I had managed 30, 40K daily Facebook budgets before for a period of time for one drop shipping store. But doing it with other D2C brands, I learned a lot more than I had learned previously. So anyways, needless to say, after having multiple successful brands and actually having the opportunity to put all of the skills that I had learned from the agency and from the previous dropshipping stores and brands to good use, let's just say that over the course of the following months that I had made that decision to get back into the brand building space, I was kicking myself for not having gotten back into it sooner. Now, fast forward to now, I've gotten back into the coaching game over the last 12 months or so. And it's been incredibly rewarding, seeing complete beginners go from literally zero, nothing, nada, nilch to 10K a month in profit, 20K a month in profit plus countless times. And to be very transparent, it's also been really, really, really difficult to see people not scale to 10K a month in profit during the time that I've worked with them one-on-one, with me feeling obligated and indebted to kind of force things to work with them. But the reality is it's impossible to deliver amazing results to everyone that you work with a consulting or a coaching or a service-based business that puts so much responsibility in the hands of the individual, right? Like I can bring a horse to water, but I can't force the horse to drink it. And honestly, it's something I'm still working on to this day. And although I know that not everyone that I work with one-on-one or that I have over the last 12 months has gotten to that 10, 20, 30K a month in profit mark, I do know that they've acquired multi 6-7 figure skill sets that are applicable in multiple different industries if they apply it properly. And I've given them the blueprint to succeed in e-commerce. They usually just have to give it more time. They have to zoom out. They have to be patient. And that goes for most people who are given e-commerce a go, not just those who I worked with on a coaching basis, right? Like you're going to work as though you need to put food on the table tomorrow, but be willing to hit your goals on a 3 to 5 year time horizon, and you'll win over everyone else who's playing the short game. But that's really hard when you got bills coming up tomorrow. Now, another tricky thing about e-commerce coaching is that I dilute my dollar per hour a ton relative to what I make per hour invested in my e-commerce brands. There's no way that I can scale my time in a way that can make me more than what my e-commerce brands can make. In fact, my hourly rate's probably a 10th of what it is of what I charge coaching as opposed to what I make from the e-commerce brands. But the play and the caveat is that the income wouldn't be 10 times more for a dollar per hour invested in e-commerce had it not been for the many, 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 many things that I have learned myself from coaching other individuals. I get the opportunity to oversee hundreds of product tests every single month and the operations of so many different brands and individuals and strategies. And it has a multiplicative effect on my learning. And I can also take all of those data points and continuously improve the strategies and the systems that we have in order to better serve those who I work with on a coaching basis. And another pro, which I kind of alluded to earlier, is that, the first 3 students that I worked with, I partnered with one of them and we scaled it to over $1 million a month. And so I was like, well, what if, one in, 15 or 20 people that I work with, they're just fantastic operators. They're really hard workers. And we can help them get from, let's say, 0 to 10K a month or 20K a month in profit. And they're like, well, shit, Kyle, what's next? I want to get to 50. I want to get to 100K a month in profit plus. And I get to actually jump in and just partner on the brand and inject my team, my systems, and myself, my time into the business in exchange for minority equity in the company. And that's what I did with a couple of students more recently. And, my goal is to build a portfolio of 10 or more of these 7-figure per month brands within the next like 12 to 18 months. Like right now I have 2 and I have a 3rd in the works. But you know, if the IRS is pocket watching, just keep in mind I got minority equity, and let's assume that they're all just making enough money to keep the lights on. So yeah, I guess that's my story. There's so many things in between that I wasn't fully able to share, but I want to do one of these, you know, every couple of months and just check in and update you guys on where I'm at and share more behind the scenes stuff, because I always want to be building as transparently as possible. And not everything is all sunshine and rainbows on the business side of things. The e-commerce landscape changes so quickly, but like I said, I'm always trying to be as transparent as possible on this channel regarding like everything entrepreneurship wise and this whole crazy entrepreneurial journey. But I will say that from all the shit that I've experienced over the last 7 years in business and complementarily on the personal side, I have always come out better on the other side. And I know you will as well. So yep, that's my story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.